Well, debate night 6 has come and gone, but will it end up mattering that much as the Iowa caucuses rapidly approach? Joining us with her thoughts is the one and only Ana Kasparian. She is the host and executive producer of The Young Turks, and it's always great to see you, Ana.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, all right. It's actually funny because I just talked to your great friend and co-host, Cenk. So I got his thoughts. Now I get to hear your thoughts. Who do you think really performed well last night? Who do you think was the loser last night? What do you think mattered?
Well, I always think that Bernie wins because his answers are always so genuine and authentic, and he has the policy proposals to back them up. But I really do think it was a good night for multiple candidates. I think that Andrew Yang, while he should have been given more opportunity to speak, had a lot of strong answers. And as usual, he brings up issues that I think other candidates might not think of. And so I really appreciated that he talked about mental health issues, autism. He really fired back on the poor framing of the economy question. I believe the question was, how do you run in such a strong economy? And he laid it out really clearly. Our economy is not strong for the vast majority of Americans, and I love that he said that. Klobuchar had a strong night. And so I think that this debate really demonstrated the strengths of some of the candidates, and they did a good job in emphasizing the differences among them. There was a loser, in my opinion, and that was Pete Buttigieg. I think for a person who isn't maybe following politics closely and watch that debate, they would probably ask themselves, what's up with this Buttigieg guy? He seems like the heel. He seems like the one that everyone on that stage can't stand. And if you're paying close attention to what he has to say, there's really no substance there. There's a lot of flowery language. There's a lot of platitudes. But I think people are a lot smarter these days. And that kind of stuff, maybe got a candidate by in 2008 isn't going to work this time around.
There is a sort of like special visceral loathing that the other candidates seem to have of Pete, which, they go at each other. Biden, Bernie had an exchange that was hot on healthcare, but you don't get this sense that they just have utter contempt for each other. Whereas you do get that sense that Amy and Warren and Bernie, who called him like an energetic young guy or whatever, that they have a special level of sort of condescension for him. Where do you think that comes from? What do you think that's about?
Well, I think it comes from the fact that he's a 37-year-old mayor of a small town that's really in disarray. And so he goes up there and he talks a big talk and uses strong language, but he doesn't really say anything. And I think for all the other candidates out there or up there, they're wondering who is this guy to position himself as someone who's better suited to lead the country than we are? And, his answers in previous debates have been disastrous, and it's kind of shocking that it hasn't hurt him. In one of the debates, he was asked about the racial tensions in South Bend. He was asked about the South Bend Police Department, which our very own investigative journalist Jonathan Larson has written extensively about. And he just straight out admitted, yeah, I haven't really done enough when it comes to that issue. And it didn't hurt him. So I would be frustrated as a candidate if I saw that happening. If you can't handle the situation in your small town, how are you going to lead an entire country?
Well, and I give you guys and I give Jonathan so much credit because you've picked up where the mainstream media completely dropped the ball. I mean, you are head and shoulders above the level of investigation into his tenure as mayor and what's going on in that city from the mainstream media, who hasn't even bothered to really take a look at it. But I also wanted to ask you about Amy Klobuchar, because I agreed with you. I thought this was by far her strongest debate. I thought she was one of the people who also benefited from sort of owning Pete over his claim that, I won in Mike Pence's Indiana. And she made sure to point out, no. You lost by 20 points in Mike Pence's Indiana when you ran statewide. Let's be clear. But she's also the candidate that the pundits have most wanted to make happen, right? Every debate we hear, Amy's surging at the right time. Amy was strong. Amy was great. Amy was funny. This time she actually gave them something to work with. Do you think it will ultimately translate for her in the polls?
I don't know. It really remains to be seen. I'm wondering if some of Buttigieg's supporters might go over to Amy Klobuchar. No idea. I just think that even though she had a great night, she doesn't really have an inspiring message. And that's what voters are really looking for right now. I give her credit for her honesty. I mean, she is, I think, the leading candidate in telling people that you're not going to get anything. So I don't, maybe she'll have a temporary surge, but I don't think it'll be long lasting or sustainable.
Yeah, I think she checks a lot of establishment boxes in terms of the type of candidate they imagine should be the person that voters ultimately get behind, even though voters have different ideas. Last question for you, and I wanted to ask you about your co-host, great friend of this show as well, and someone I've known for a long time as well, too. Cenk Uygur has been just absolutely dragged through the mud by the media. Oppo research dug up from past comments that he's apologized for. Also, comments completely in an interview with David Duke that's completely spun to make it seem like Cenk was saying, no, you're not a racist, when it was the exact opposite of what he was doing. And that wasn't some fly-by-night journalist. That was printed in the New York Times. Now, I know Cenk's a fighter. I know none of this phases him, but he's also a human being, and so are you. What has it been like to watch him going through all of this?
Well, it's been pretty devastating for multiple reasons. First off, there's the reason that you mentioned. Cenk is someone who's close to me and has really given me, as a woman in politics and political journalism, a voice. If it weren't for him constantly encouraging me and mentoring me, I don't think I'd be where I am. So he's someone close to me, so it hurts for that reason. But there's also just this pretty devastating revelation that I had as a result of what's been going on. I believe that some of these attacks are intentional and malicious. The New York Times, David Duke spin is a perfect example of that. They were incredibly reluctant and hesitant to correct that. It was only after all this backlash, the New York Times was willing to finally retract that and give like this half apology. It wasn't even an apology. I mean, they kind of threw him under the bus or minimized him by calling him a radio show host, when really he accomplished a lot more than that. Not to say anything bad about radio show hosts, but it was obviously meant to be dismissive of him.
Of course.
But that made me realize that while I had previously suspected that there were bad actors in the media, or maybe some journalists who want to toe the establishment line, this whole ordeal has confirmed to me that the media is an extension. The mainstream media is an extension of corrupt political campaigns, plain and simple. And that made me question my whole worldview. What have I believed in, or what have I trusted in, New York Times reporting that's just flat out false or is full of spin? And, putting the show together every day has become even more challenging because I don't know what to believe or who to trust. And that's a very dangerous place for this country to be in.
I think that's very well and very powerfully stated. For me as well, it's been incredibly clarifying, because you just realize if you're a threat to them at all, they will stop at absolutely nothing to take you down. So, Anna, we're so grateful for your voice. Thank you so much for being a great friend of this show. And thank you so much for all that you do out there in the world to make sure that people do have accurate, fair news sources that they can go to.
Thank you, Crystal. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. All right, and we'll have more Rising for you after this.